Hello, my name is John Mayer, and I'm the Executive Director of CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. The video you are about to watch is from the annual CALI conference held at the University of Michigan School of Law in Ann Arbor, Michigan on June 4th and 5th, 2026. Most U.S. law schools are members of CALI. CALI publishes over 1,400 interactive tutorials that teach the law to law students. Faculty can also use LessonLink to create formative assessments using CALI lessons. CALI publishes casebooks by paying law faculty to write and review books that can be adopted in many courses in law school. These books are free to download from our website, or print versions can be purchased at near cost. You can download the PDFs or even the Microsoft Word versions of most of our books and add your own commentary before distributing to your students. $300 casebooks are a thing of the past, and adopting one book from CALI saves you more than your entire institutional membership. If you would like to learn more, email me at jmayer@cali.org. I would be happy to visit or zoom into your school to talk about CALI.
No, I guess that's our cue. All right. Can folks hear me? All right. There are three of us today, and we've had a lot of fun putting this together. I'm David Colarusso. And we'll be doing this in three parts, but we've worked on this all together, so I'm very excited about where this is going to go. First off, we sort of struck upon the notion that, should we teach everyone to do vibe coding? And we sort of thought it was like teaching people to do ice sculpting with a chainsaw. The difference is that when you ice sculpt with a chainsaw, if you cut off a limb, it's very hard to reattach it. But if you are producing something that is not for the final user yet and it's incorrect in vibe coding, you can edit and correct it much more easily than reattaching a limb. But we do want people to know that there are dangers here, and we'll talk more about those later. But we think it's worth it. So our road ahead today, we already said, chainsaw ice sculpting for beginners. But what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about motivations and provocations, sort of why it is you might want to use vibe coding to help with your instruction. Jenny is going to get into the nitty-gritty rules of the game, sort of as we were joking about laying down the law, things you really want to think about. And then Rebecca is going to help you get your hands dirty. So we do expect that by the time you leave here today, if you have not finished vibe coding a project, you will know how to finish one tonight when you go back to your hotel. So I'm going to start off with a quick story. This is a tool that I largely vibe coded with ChatGPT, and it was like 20 different iterations. And what this tool is a citation testing tool. And you might be like, oh, that's a really not the best set of instructions. It'll all make sense in a while, but basically the idea is I came into class, I said, you're going to help me test a citation checking tool that I've built that uses AI. And we're going to sit down and we're going to do doc review for 20 minutes. We actually did this in class. I'm not going to make you do it. Tough room. Okay, so what happened is it said, okay, what's going to happen is you're going to use this citation checking tool. You're going to go in, and when you get in there, you're going to see a couple things. You're going to see a quote from a brief. So you're helping a judge check this brief. You're to assume that the quotes reference the articles here, and what you're trying to do is figure out whether or not the reference site, the proposition is supported by the reference site. And you have some AI tools, right? You have this AI assistant, and it tells you, sort of how confident it is, whether or not it's supported, and you can either allow the citation or reject the citation. You also have this little information off on the side, which is sort of a pacing buddy, which tells you that you have a rival reviewer in the room, and it shows you where their progress is. And over the course of 20 minutes, you get to watch that other person sort of zoom ahead of you. And you've been told that you're going to be rewarded for the sort of not just the fastest, but some mix of speed and accuracy. And so for 20 minutes, they're sitting down competing, and the reward at the end was a Dunkin' Donuts gift card. So I teach in Boston. This is the currency we use there. Um, and so, and I sat down at the front of the room with them, my back to them, so they could look over my shoulder and see I was going through the same thing as them. And by golly, I hate doc review. For 20 minutes, we sat there like screen after screen after screen. Oh, does this look? And so what you can see here is that this is an expanded view. You'll notice that there was a non-expanded view, which was just sort of support. And you had to actually affirmatively click to get the expanded view to see the actual underlying text. This was all lightly fictionalized text from 100 some odd cases. And we went through and we did it. And then at the end, they all got results. They uploaded those results back to me, and we saw this. And what we saw, that there were 3 phases to the exercise. And what you're seeing here is a set of bar graphs for each of those phases. And that first one, you're seeing the accuracy of the user versus the accuracy of the assistant. That is, how correct the AI tool was. And in that first phase, you'll see the user was 79% accurate in sort of their determinations. The assistant had been programmed to be 100% accurate in those first phases. In the second phase, the assistant was, again, and these were equal timed phases from pools that were drawn such that everyone would have an equal mix. In the second phase, their accuracy went up as they learned, oh, this tool is great, it helps me out. In the third phase, the context shifted. So the AI tool actually wasn't as good, and it would make mistakes that were tied to the type of citations. So if you were paying attention, you were noticing, oh, something's a little different than the ones before. Maybe I should make sure it's still doing well. Unfortunately, when the accuracy of the tool dropped, the accuracy of the students also dropped. And then what's really interesting is this second set of bar graphs, which shows you how many times they would make a determination without expanding to get that additional information and actually looking at what the original text said. And what you see is in the first, they're doing pretty good. They're checking, they're not checking about 65% of the time. Second phase, they're not checking 80% of the time. Last phase, they're not checking 84% of the time. And so they were all told, congratulations, you fell victim to automation bias. You over-relied on your tool. You thought the context was the same, but the context had changed. And there you go. I could have done that lesson by saying automation bias is a thing that happens where you over-rely on a tool. And you know what they're all thinking? Not me. But in 20 minutes, I sat them down and they all had an experience that they are always going to remember that they're human and they fell victim to automation bias, and they understood that. And they also knew that all of their peers had fallen victim, well, I think almost everyone did, had fallen victim to automation bias. That was a rather complicated set of tools I had to build for a 20-minute exercise. I've been wanting to do something like this for years. I built that tool and 4 other similar tools in 3 days, thanks to the tools we're going to show you today. So that is the motivation, is that by using these tools, you can take something that you've always wanted to do that was just a little bit out of your reach, and you can make it real. And you can use that to great pedagogical advantage so that your students can actually learn something. So I'm going to give a little example, and then we'll get you to the point where you're going to be building your own. So one of the other things I've always wanted, so as like a good experiential educator, so I teach in I run a legal innovation and technology lab, which is in our clinical programs at Suffolk. And so like a good experiential educator, I feel that experience is an excellent teacher. Right? There are some things you can learn absent experiences, but you don't really know them without having an experience. And that was the sort of thing that I was trying to get at with the automation bias exercise. Another thing I've always wanted to get students to realize is that different good faith actors, this seems to be, for me, very important right now, different good faith actors can have different mutually exclusive ideas of what is fair. And just because someone has a different view of what is fair, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're being a bad faith actor. And so I thought of a lot of examples about that. How in the world am I going to do that in a way where I don't turn off half the people that I'm talking to? And so I came up with this idea of a fairness simulator. I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could come up with a situation where they could simulate some situation, change the variables, and see what the fair outcome is. And so what I hit upon was this notion of, we have a single-use bathroom on the 4th floor at the law school. Anyone can use it. And so I thought, you know what? Hey, everyone. And I used the Cali Instapoll, right? The Cali Instapoll, because that is great. So I asked them, I put this up to the Cali Instapoll, when using that bathroom, how often, what do you do with the toilet seat? And then I asked them, if you could institute a rule for everyone to follow, how would you like them to leave the seat? And why? The idea being that this is, how do you make it fair? And so what this tool does is it allows you, it has two populations, sitters who use the seat down, standers who sometimes use the seat down, sometimes use the seat up, and another variable for how often the standers are sort of less than careful and instituting a cost to the next person who comes along. And then what happens is you can actually run this simulation hundreds or thousands of times, given different settings of, sort of what is your population mix between sitters and standers, how often do the standers not put the seat up when they should have, and then how much you dislike the cleaning, what do you think the cost is sort of cleaning up after those lazy standers, and also sort of in relationship to the cost of just having to move the seat. So you can run that hundreds of times, and I gave them 3 metrics to look at. A little hard, a little washed out here, but sort of the social cost, sort of like the how much work overall is being done by the entire population. There's sort of the equity measure of, is one population having to move the seat or clean more than the other population? And then there's sort of the, I come to the seat and is it the way I want it? So how often does an individual have to change things? And you run that and you find that the outcomes are very, very fact specific. When I originally asked this question, there was a very big mix. When I asked the question of what people do or what people thought was fair, there was a very big mix of how people responded. Almost no one said D, though, which was nice. After this exercise, I was actually kind of shocked because I had them break into groups. And so I said, break into groups, run the simulation. Came out, and a number of people, there was one group that's like, yeah, D. And I'm like, what? And it turned out they had a really high penalty for cleaning, and they had a really lazy set of standards. And I was a little worried about sort of what that said about some things, but it was a self-consistent set of rules based upon the assumptions they had made. And so out of that, we were able to have a discussion about how there can be competing and mutually exclusive definitions of what is fair, and use that to have a really nice conversation where we eventually got into, there's this facial recognition program, and it's used by, and it did end with a, Blackstone's ratio, and like, okay, so what is some certain federal agency using as their fairness metric? And it was an inversion of Blackstone's ratio. But anyhow, that was a conversation I could not have started there, but I was able to get there because we were able to take this route. So we can't always agree on fair. That was a lesson that I could talk about before, but this was a place where we were able to make it very visceral. And so now let's get to the rules of the game. Oh, and one thing I didn't say, which I was going to do, I should have really you should go to that webpage that I had at the beginning, lawascode.com, not .org, that's everyone. There are resources there that will walk you through this. And I'm going to hope that people will clean up the things I left off.
So I tend to be the person that asks, have you read the terms of service? Which is why I get to talk about the rules. And for those at home, since we were not on microphone when we introduced ourselves, I am Jenny Wondrasik. I'm the director of the Law Library at Capital University. So every good game has its quick start rules. You'll find your quick start rules in the terms of service for your AI programs. But this is the quick start rules for vibe coding. Plan your project. What are your pain points? What's your desired outcome? Where are you getting your data from. The librarians should be happy to hear that we're including that. What tool do you have, and what are you going to use? You need to write a prompt, you need to test it, and then you pretty much repeat as needed. Okay. But along with those quick start rules, there are some essential rules that we have to play by. For instance, our employers like to pick things out for us and say, these are the tools you can use. So if your employer says you can't use Claude, you can't use Claude for your work. So just think about what they're saying. They usually have good reasons, usually. So just remember that while we all like to go a little rogue at times, we do need to play by the rules. The other rules, the rules of professional conduct. How many people in here are lawyers or work for someone who's a lawyer? Okay, so you know then that the rules of professional conduct for your state are binding on you, where you're licensed, and the people who work for you have to abide by them too. So these are things like confidentiality for your clients, things like making sure you know the risks and benefits of the technology you're going to use. All of those great rules that we learned about in professional responsibility that are now coming back to haunt us. And we are seeing these emphasized more and more when it comes to AI. So these are things to think about, particularly if you are talking to a group of lawyers. So like if you are doing a CLE, things like that, you need to keep their requirements in mind and not just go off the rails, okay? Honestly, FERPA, which we'll see down under number 4, tracks really well with client data for lawyers. It's about the same level of security. You're not allowed to share student data unless you have an agreement with the vendor that they are not going to use your student data. Okay, so these are things that you need to think about before you give them the names of your students, the emails, GPAs, grade distributions, things like that. Make sure you are protecting your students. So FERPA is what would cost us federal funding. Whether or not we have federal funding going forward, that's a whole different conversation. Okay, so every student has a right to privacy. It is illegal for you to ask them to waive it. So you can't just say, oh, well, by taking this course, you waive your privacy rights. Can't do it. You cannot force them to use something that is insecure. Okay, so just remember they have rights we have to maintain. Security is a big one, by the way. And this is where part of it comes in with please, please, please read the terms of service. I did an exercise in my AI in the law class when DeepSeek came out. I walked in, I handed them all copies of the terms of service, and I'm like, hey, we're going to read this and figure out if our law firm can use it. Or if the clients come and say, oh, I'm using DeepSeek, what are you doing? Anyone want to guess where DeepSeek stores its data? China! Why might that concern all of us? Yes. So China has a very different idea of whose data is private, and it's not ours. Okay? So just know data that goes over to China is automatically going to be data mined. Data that goes to the European Union, they have different views of privacy than we do, so there's a chance it could get locked down if they don't think your company is protecting it enough. Little things like that. So we need to think about these first. Privacy, we talked about FERPA. Again, data privacy is important regardless of whether you are working with students or lawyers. And most people have stopped thinking about data retention. This is something you do need to think about because just like IT has those best practices of You should not have more permissions than you need. You should not have more data than you need, because when breaches come, it just makes it worse. And breaches are pretty much inevitable these days. Think about what happened with National Public Data, where they gave away everybody's social security number. Did they need their social security number? I would argue no, but they had it, so it got lost in the breach. So things to think about: don't collect what you don't need. The more data you collect, the more laws that apply to you, by the way. So when I build, I refuse to save data. If you want to start all over, that's fine, but I will not save your data once my tools are done with whatever session you're running. Legal requirements, ADA. So BIPA is the biometric law from Illinois. CCPA is California Privacy Act. There's a whole bunch. I just learned today that one of the New York counties now has a biometric data law. So make sure that you're looking at it. And it's not just where you're running it from, it's where your users are. So if someone from Chicago, for instance, dials into a webinar, BIPA is triggered for me because they're in Illinois. So just things to think about. And one of my things that I heard at a session yesterday, someone, and I think it was Cindy, asked about continuity. Like, what happens if you leave? And I'm actually in the process of leaving my current employer. I work for Capital. As of August 1st, I work for SMU Law. So I am in that process where I need to plan to hand off some of my projects. So my projects all now come with a products requirements document, a PRD, and I have a skill that actually writes these in Claude. If you want it, we'll post it on the website. But what this does is it goes through what I'm making, what my outputs are. Essentially, it goes back to this plan your project. So Claude knows what I'm trying to solve. It knows what I want. It knows what my data sources are. But it also tracks more information. So this is my ExamSoft question import assessment. Not only does it give an overview of the product, it actually goes through and says, okay, these are the question types this tool works with. And these are the data sources that we're using. And it walks through all of those questions. So my PRD skill, if you decide to download and use it, will ask you questions like, what are you building? What's your timeline? Things like that. And it will break down that information and put it in this document. The idea with this document is that I should be able to hand it to a developer or an AI and say, build this for me. And it builds it because all of the decisions are already in here. So I also have a skill that creates a status report every night when I tell it good night. So between this and my status report that tells the AI where I am in the process, as long as I turn over my files, it should be good. So this tool is built and working. If something goes wrong, they should be able to give it to Claude and say, what broke? And Claude can look at it and say, okay, this is how you fix it. So documentation is your friend. If I get hit by a bus while I'm here, which, you know, some of those buses don't stop. We've got the documentation. They just take it and run with it. You can also store these things on places like GitHub. All of my README files, things like that are there. But having that documentation so you can hand it off is good, as long as it belongs to your employer. If it belongs to you, you do you. But if you need to be able to pass it on to someone else, make sure you have what they need. So that is my spiel. And now I think we should actually walk through that process with Rebecca.
All right. Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry. I fell off my chair earlier, so whatever I do now is going to be less embarrassing than that. Okay, so I want to kind of walk you through the kind of steps that I suggest taking with when you're starting a vibe coding project. So the first point is kind of what David started with, like start with a pedagogical pain point, something you haven't been able to do before. Maybe something where you want them to get like instant feedback in some way, or you want some level of interactivity that you haven't been able to build, or you want to lead them through a process and trick them into learning something. I've had many of these, and you can see some examples from all three of us on the website of things that we have built to kind of like meet these points. And I will warn you, I think when you get started with this, you'll start to see so many applications, and it may take over your outside of work hours, as it has mine. There's just so much stuff that's exciting that you can do. So we'll have some more examples in a minute, but I want to start with this. Oh yeah, Cindy. Yes. Yeah, so there is a link to a gallery there, and that'll show you some of the things that we've built. Yeah, slides there as well. So I wanted to start here because the point isn't just to like build something for the sake of building it. It's to figure out like what you need. And I do a similar, like if I'm teaching my law students like how to vibe code, or I'm talking to a group of attorneys, like they have different pain points. They're gonna have like a practice pain point, but it's sort of a similar thing we're trying to do is identify like what problem are you trying to solve here. Okay, so then you're gonna choose a tool. So the ones I'm gonna ask you to use today are kind of some of the kind of simpler end of the tools, but there's a reason for that, though that's what you can probably complete, at least mostly, a build in the amount of time that we're gonna have. And they're also mostly available with free accounts. So ChatGPT, Canvas, and Claude both have these tools where they will make a little simple HTML page for you. And that, I think, is vibe coding. Like you are creating a little web app and it can do something for you. And they also are pretty fast. You can get something within just a few minutes. There's also another product called Google AI Studio, which is free to anyone with a Google account. And it can do a little bit more complicated projects, including it can create projects where the person using it is interacting with an AI, whereas the chatbots can't really do that. And the builds are a little slower there too. So you can try that in this session because again, it is free, but it might take a little bit longer. You might not be able to finish in the time we have. Okay, so after you have picked what tool you're gonna use, you're gonna create a plan. Now, when I started doing this, I would just say, here's my idea, interview me about it. And that was like the extent of my planning. And you can do that, but I really like the idea of a product's requirement document. So that's what we have built into the prompts. It's a little bit more extensive, forces you to think a little bit more. But it's still you're gonna think before you just say, build this thing. And that will save you many, many headaches as you are building. Because the alternative is say, build me this thing, and you're like, oh, that's not right, oh, that's not right, oh, that's not right, and you spend like an hour trying to get it where you want, whereas you could have just spent a few minutes ahead of time to properly scope it. So you're gonna plan out a little bit ahead of time, and then you're gonna build it. In ChatGPT and Gemini, you have to specifically tell it that you want to be in Canvas. So there's like a little plus button or a little tools button that you have to choose the canvas. Claude isn't so picky and it will just do it. So once you tell it that you want an HTML page. So whichever tool you're using, if you can't find the thing that makes a page, then we can help. We're gonna be walking around the room. And as much as I said, like, yes, you wanna plan it out, you also don't need to worry about getting it perfect, like on the first try. You are going to have opportunities to iterate. And sometimes, if I've iterated a bunch and I can't get it to do what I want, I'm like, forget this, I'm gonna start in a new session. Give me a prompt to start a new session because I'm done with you. And then I take my prompt over into new session and it forgets about all the mistakes it's made so far. The other thing to say when you're building something, sometimes you'll want to be working with some documents. So like I had one student who created a whole page that had all of the local rules that she might encounter from like 10 different counties, and it was nicely organized and it was searchable and all this. And she was initially trying to do it with just PDF files. She was like uploading all the PDF files into the chat and saying, build me this tool. And she was finding that she was running out of space. So the way around that is to convert your PDF files into text. So into even just like a plain text document, that will allow the tool to work with it better. So if there is a PDF you're working with, go into another session, say, can you put this into a plain text document for me? The format that AIs really like is called Markdown. So you could also ask them to put it in a Markdown document for you. But having that in that easier to read format really helps the result. And then there's like a bunch of iteration you can do. So I have some suggestions here. Like it's really nice to make it work on mobile, so it'll work on a phone. It's nice if they're going to get results to have a way to export the results, especially if you want to look at what they've done. That's an easy way to do it without having to build in like persistent data that's going to live forever and that you have to worry about. Think about accessibility. I maybe play a little fast and loose with accessibility because I do require my students to use a bunch of these tools, but I do try to make sure they're accessible. The same way I would make sure a Word document is accessible, I run some checks like, does this have headers, like, et cetera, to make sure that what I'm building is going to be accessible. You can add some like hint buttons to it. I end up doing a lot of that to explain like, here's what this choice is. I've had a lot of luck with saying like apply universal design principles to this. That often helps a lot if you're building a teaching tool. So there's a lot of like iteration that you can do. And you could also do all of this ahead of time and ask it to be put in your products requirements document. Okay, and then you're actually going to want people to use this at some point probably. So you need to get it in front of them somehow. ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini all have like a little share button for whatever artifact or canvas you make. You can use that. It's gonna give like a, chatgpt.com/ like a bunch of numbers and letters that are really long, and I don't think they have to be logged in to use it. They don't need a paid account to use it, definitely. They might have to be logged in. But I find it simpler to try to put it somewhere else so I don't have to worry about that. There's almost always like a little bit of problem like using that route, so I try to put it somewhere else. One place to put it is just locally on your machine. Like you just share the HTML file that is produced and you could just hit a download button in ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. You can copy the whole thing, save it as an HTML file. You can give it to your students. They could use it. So that's one way. There's a few other ways that I think are pretty simple and just take a little bit longer than that. One is called Netlify, and you can just put your file into a folder, upload it to Netlify, and it'll create it instantly. You don't even need an account. It doesn't last long, but it lasts long enough to share it with a class. What I personally end up doing more is GitHub, and GitHub has a really nice product called Pages where you can just instantly deploy any HTML file. So you'll see that that's what we've done with Law as Code. It's a GitHub page. And the other nice thing about it is any changes you make are instantly deployed. So you don't have to ever worry about like updating it. So that's what I recommend. It requires like a few additional steps of creating a GitHub account and kind of like working through that like pain of a new product, but I promise it's a pretty easy product. And we also have a list of a couple additional tools you can use. I would say don't try to figure these out today as we're practicing, but if you want to continue building past today, Replit, Lovable, and Bolt are three where they kind of are a full stack. So you can go in there, you can ideate, you can come up with your ideas, it will build it for you, and it will deploy it for you. So that's kind of all in one. So a lot of my earlier projects are on Replit because I found that to be really easy. I was scared of deploying, and it would just do it for me. And they also all have free tiers. It won't last you long as you really get into this, and that was another reason I moved off, is like, why am I paying to Replit to host something for me when I can host it for free on GitHub? But they're nice if you are just wanting to get started and have everything all in one. Okay, then the next step, so if you're finding that to be too limiting, is to go to like a developer style stack. I'm still not a developer. I broke our website right before we started. David had to fix it. But I can follow along, you know, I can follow along enough that I can use these tools. So this is what I mostly use now. I use Claude Code. I keep all my code on GitHub. I deploy with Render. They also have a free tier. And this keeps things like fairly simple for me. GitHub can deploy my simpler pages, but if I want anything that has like a database within it, or that like interacts with an API, then I find it a little easier to use Render. But you all don't have to worry about any of this for right now. For right now, we are going to use the simple tools. Is this my last slide? I think that's my last slide. All right, I don't have a slide for that. Oh yeah, Jenny. Yes. We've got some resources here too. Like one of my biggest fears is that I would like we'd come here and say like, yes, go vibe code, and then everyone goes and gets Claude Code and like accidentally deletes their desktop or something. So I don't want that to happen. So we do have some resources here. I actually really like this secure vibe coding guide and how to use Claude Code safely if you are wanting to dip your toes into kind of those beyond a simple HTML page and doing it safely. But yes, also Kaz is correct. Like, you have resources available to you of other people who do this. So please ask us, and we are happy to help. I don't think any of the tools that you get no. Got to give it some motivation like that. Please save me from getting fired. Okay, so we now have an opportunity for you to do it yourself, and Jenny and David and I will walk around and answer questions. Other people who have some experience, feel free to answer your neighbors' questions as well. Yes, and we will have someone in Zoom, for those of you on Zoom, who can answer questions via Zoom. So we have this do-it-yourself guide here. You don't have to use this, but I suggest it would be helpful. So you're going to select what you want to build with. So you can choose between ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. And then you can select an idea. You can, if you already have something, great. Or if you want to sit a minute and think about it, great. But we also have a few of the things that we've done, so you can just kind of see how it works. Or maybe you want to take inspiration from that and build on it. So like this is one of David's, the simulation of competing definitions of fairness. I've got a couple. This is one of the things I've always wanted to do as someone who teaches legal tech is actually show people how e-discovery works without having to have a vendor come in for an hour-long presentation. So I created something that would kind of like simulate it very simply for them. So this is like a Gemini version of that it's going to help you build. So you select one of these, and for Gemini, it'll give you a whole prompt. So I'm going to show it here. But for the others, it'll actually just give you a link that you can click and go into Claude or ChatGPT, and it'll all be there for you. So our suggestion is go ahead and use this, something like it. And then once you've got your specifications done, then you can ask the tool, go ahead and build based on those specifications. And then once you have something that you like, would love to hear about it, but at the kind of end of this session, but also we have some instructions on how you can share that. So, all right, we're gonna actually do this now. Any questions before we start? All right, so you'll need a laptop for this probably. So if you don't have a laptop, or you might need to find a buddy. Yeah. You don't need a laptop. You can do it on your phone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to jump on.
Okay. All right. Has everyone gotten to the point where you've gotten started? Anyone need help getting started still? Okay, cool. So I would love to hear about some of the things that you're making, or maybe that you've already made, or questions that you have as you've gotten started building.
Maybe questions about your builds or about what any of us have done.
Yeah, Cass.
So this is a bit cheating because but so I created for a library student class, allowed them to make decisions about categories and tags. How well or how accurate is it those tags when something in your stain, there's only two things in there. And so we kept having them make those decisions. Category name is like
That's so cool.
on their computer, FYI, and a reflection prompt so they can download it.
That's awesome.
Was there a question online? I don't see it.
Just telling me
Oh,
I
he's.
the microphone to people. All right. Anyone else?
So I'm licensed in Louisiana, and I practice criminal law a lot. So I used it as a tool to quiz students on the 5 degrees of homicide in Louisiana because I'm pretty well versed in them, and it's making me be more specific about an area I already know. So I like that, and it's giving me, I guess, things I can tell the students if they get it wrong, not just the right answer, but this is why this is not the right answer. This is why it's a different degree of homicide. So I see it as a really good tool for that.
Cool. I think that's a good point here, like about like sort of quality control and check. Rebecca mentioned this earlier. You can take your finished product and plop it into another chat session, like Cass was saying, and you can say like, evaluate this for me. So all the stuff I did with the algorithmic bias one, I actually also, you can build things that are tests into it. So there, if you append like a dash test to the tool, I can go in and I can see additional things about how things are working. I made a whole viewer that allowed me to look at all the lightly fictionalized sites to make sure that they actually matched up the way I wanted them to match. So the reason why we were okay in the end with giving you the chainsaw to do the ice sculpting was because we knew you could take time to fix any problems. I think that, as Jenny was saying, if you were to like deploy some of this stuff where you were getting real information, and that becomes an entirely different kettle of fish, and the amount of scrutiny you'd want to do, it changes entirely. But other things share, like anyone have a thing that's working? You want to tell us about it?
Sure. So I am terrible about tracking my time with the research assistants that I supervise in the summer. So I created my own law firm style time tracker, where I put in the RA's initials, I put in the professor that they're working for, and I have details on what I did for them and put in the time in law firm type increments. And so far it seems to be working. Unfortunately, I've ran out of free tokens on Claude, so I can't get it out of dark mode yet, but it's working fine. It hasn't hallucinated anything, and I've asked it to export to a CSV file that I can then download and save, so that when I'm submitting my hours at the end of the month, I'll just be able to consult there. So I'm actually trying to figure out, so how do I save this so I can do this every day.
Yeah, CSV files are flat text files are really good for loading and uploading. Was there,
So we have created, I think. On now.
we can do the entire hold the mic like we're on
No,
TikTok.
I think we're on. So we asked ChatGPT, what was our initial prompt? We had the sort of the given, like, don't use React prompts, and we asked, please, I'd like to build a tool to help students understand the difference between slip laws, session laws, and codified laws. Please ask me some questions to help design the actual app. And it asked us 1 zillion questions, 12, and then it asked us 8 more questions after we answered the first 12, and they were great questions. And then it asked us 3 more very detailed, just like, how should I design this thing, and had sort of ideas.
Next week, you're going to have a great app.
Yeah. Do you want us to do drag and drop? Do you want there to be a timeline? Do you want them to have to type things in? How should this look? It sort of, we want them to learn this, and it gave us ideas for how that thing should work. And it has now created an app where we can drag and drop little cards that represent like a bill or a public law or the statutes at large, and ask us how we got it right. And we've already identified a few things in here that are like, well, that's not very useful. Oh, it tells you on the card whether it's a slip law or not. So obviously you drag it to the slip law spot. So there's some obvious things that require iteration. But yeah, in this time, we have an HTML page that does that now.
Well, cool. I thought it was going to be a week after all the questions, but it's great. You got a working thing.
I've got 3 minutes left. We could hear from one more person if anyone's got something cool that you have made, or even just an idea that you want to keep making.
This was after that. We'll follow up. Are there resources we should put on the website that you don't see that we should add there so you can get to them later too? But
I don't know if this is cool or not, but I just presented at 9 o'clock about statutes and try to kind of a framework for evaluating statutes. So I decided to try to build a little app thing, and it seems like it's working pretty good. It kind of feeds me some AI output, and then I can go through and have the students kind of check if they've gone through, like, is this the correct version of the statute, these kind of things. So it's a way to test kind of what we were talking about this morning.
you're all vibe coders. Woo!
Congrats.
I think we're all very available.
Yep. All right. Yeah. I think we can wrap it up then. If you do have questions, feel free to find us. And if you'd like to share your projects with us, please do that. We would love to see them.
We'll add them to the gallery if they're really good.
Yeah.
Thank you all.